Churches everywhere are asking the same question. How do we engage in the digital world? At 88 Frames Media, we specialize in helping churches like yours engage the digital mission field. From crafting compelling videos and social media content to managing your online presence, we'll help you reach your community where they are, online. Because here's the thing, your mission hasn't changed, but the tools to reach it have. Let's connect your church to the digital mission field. Visit 88framesmedia.com to learn more.
All right, so it's been quite a while now, and I'm ready to do another episode. We have a whole, second half of this movie to finish. All right, let's see if we could try some stuff here. Expelliarmus. Ooh. All right, here we go. In brightest day, in blackest night. I mean, I never tried just... Hey! I knew I could do it!
Dude.
Welcome back. How long you been gone?
I don't know.
Feels like 5 years, right?
To me, it was more like 5 minutes.
But I'm glad you're back. We have a whole, we have part 2 of this movie to do.
You want to cover Endgame?
Absolutely. I've been waiting what feels like 5 years to get this done.
Let's do it.
Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sanctum Sanctorum Podcast, where comics and Christ culture collide. I'm one of your hosts, Chris.
I'm the other host, Joey.
And we finally got Joey back after the end of Infinity War when he was dusted away. It's nice to have you back, buddy.
It's nice to be back. Like we said, it's been a little while, but to me, it didn't feel like very long. Maybe I was in the quantum realm. I have no way of knowing.
I mean, I feel like it's been a long time, but that's just because, I feel like we ended on a cliffhanger and I'm ready to complete the story. Finish the story, as Cody Rhodes would say.
We got to pick it back up, and today we are covering Avengers Endgame. Y'all have been really excited for it. The comments and the feedback have been very anticipatory. Is that a word? Anticipatory?
I believe it is. But even if it's not, it is now. And you've been it, we've been it. So we're ready to do it.
We're excited. And before we dive into it, we have a comic culture moment. Christopher, where are we going today?
All right. So today we're kind of talking about the idea of multiple media that tells one story and whether or not that's good, bad, do we need to have it? So to jump in with it a little bit, you take things like the MCU or Star Wars, where there are movies, there are TV shows, there are comics, there are books, there are video games, all of which, or a lot of which, are considered canon.
Right.
Can that be hard for a newcomer to these franchises? Or, as, today's children are growing up, we both have kids, as they're growing up and we introduce them to these worlds. Do we introduce them to okay, so we're going to watch these 2 movies and then we got to watch the first season of this show, then read these 2 books, play half of this video game, and then we can do the 3rd movie. That kind of thing. It's even, shows I love like Firefly, had a movie that completed the show because it was canceled. And now they've released 9 books that are considered canon and episodic. So it's like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Can it be hard for people to come in? What do you think? Do you have any big franchises you like that really do that?
Yeah, I think Star Wars is a great example, and I literally just did this with my son last night.
That's probably the ultimate example.
It was his birthday, and he wanted to watch a lightsaber fight, and so I just pulled up on YouTube the first one that was short and small. It was a reel, and it was General Grievous and Obi-Wan from Revenge of the Sith.
Great one.
And he watches it, and it's entertaining, and at the end he goes, "Dad, what's the next one?" And I realized, oh, I just made a giant mistake. I threw him halfway into a movie that's halfway into a trilogy that's halfway into 9 movies. So it's like, where do you start?
That's also only partway into the story of General Grievous, who's also in the Clone Wars, which takes place in between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, where you see kind of his origin story and why he has 4 lightsabers and 4 arms. So, I mean, there's a lot of material there.
And they teased that a little bit for the fans, knowing that character and everything. So I think there are some pros and cons to it. If I wanted to go over the cons, there's plenty of them, right? Like, you can't just walk in. There's so many different medias you have to keep up with if you want to follow story, if you want to follow character, if you want to follow, side quest. All of these things can now be gone into through comics, through books, through podcasts, through multimedia. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely hard on the casual audience. I think the regular audience who love these franchises are going to follow along. But one of the things that I think are most prominent that I wanted to cover with you is that there is a huge risk of contradiction.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, like, when you throw alternate media in there, it often introduces inconsistencies and conflicts with the original IP and the main movie narrative. Because, for all intents and purposes, when we experience these intellectual properties, we're experiencing it through the medium of movie first.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah, if there's no budget, if there's no response, we sort of are like, okay, we like the world, but it'll continue elsewhere. And that's when you get into the risking of contradictions and diluting of the main story, because you then go off on these side quests. And then the diehard fans are like, well, wait a second, that doesn't line up with this. This actually contradicts that. This character's motivation is completely different from the movie. And so I think, for all of the cons that we could talk about, you really run the risk of diluting your core story if you're not going to micromanage the crap out of it. And that, that's its own tension, right? Like, you want these other creatives to be able to play in your sandbox and develop stories, characters, and thread lines, elseworlds into other parts of the netherworld. But at the same time, it's like, well, now we're compromising the main thing that we introduced that people loved so much. And I think that can be really detrimental to the main thing.
I think you're absolutely right. It can be, and as geeks, we are very big on diving in and looking at, like, oh, this is inconsistent. It says he went to this place, but actually he started at this place. It says they never knew each other, but in that book they did meet that one time. Especially if you're trying to tell a story before, I think of something like Solo, a Star Wars story.
Yeah.
So it's like, here's these little tidbits we know about Han Solo. So now we're gonna write a story that tells how he got the gold dice that hangs from the console, how he got the jacket and the blaster and the ship and all that stuff. But if there's a throwaway line in the movie that we know really well about how one of those things happened, you write a new movie story that contradicts it. Now it's like, okay, well, now which one do I believe? Or, we take a world like Star Wars, and we have, this book series called Knights of the Old Republic, and video games Knights of the Old Republic. And that was when we only had A New Hope to Return of the Jedi. So we didn't know any of the before or after. So these books let you, like, wow, this is what the Jedi were like. But then when they make new movies, all of a sudden it's like, well, those books we've been writing since the 80s, they don't matter anymore. Just ignore those. This is the real story. But then when we wrote future movies and TV shows and an animated series, then it's like, okay, some of those count because we liked some of the characters that people introduced. So some of those count. Here's the ones that count. Here's the ones that don't count. If you want all this backstory, and I think that James Gunn is running into that problem now too, taking over the DCU. Now, he directed the last, or one of the last movies of the DCEU with the Suicide Squad. And now he's saying some of that is canon, some of those characters are coming over, but some of those movies reference the DCEU versions of Superman, Batman, because they have that version of Harley Quinn and that version of um what's his name, Captain Boomerang, and those characters, which reference the older version of Suicide Squad as well.
Right.
But then also with him, you have Peacemaker, which features the old Justice League. So is that canon, or only some of it is? The new Creature Commandos, is that canon? Because they're going to make live action appearances. It becomes a little discombobulated. The Marvel ones, the MCU ones do it too. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Defenders series from Netflix, they were canon. Then they weren't when they started being contradictory. But now we want to put them in. So
they are
now it's
canon.
like, so they are canon, but only parts of it are, because it's, stuff like the Darkhold gets contradicted, but they wanted to use that for Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange, which makes sense. But then you should never have put it in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., because now it doesn't make sense when, like, people like us who like to consume the entirety of the story, do that. It starts
Right.
to become confusing. And then it's like, how do I introduce someone new? Do I tell them only watch the movies? And then if you have questions or you particularly like something, we'll dive into the other stuff that goes along with it.
I think Star Wars is a good example of it working and it not working, right? Like, even within the original trilogy, I'm sure fans, once they experienced Empire Strikes Back, went back to New Hope and said, wait a second, you said Darth Vader killed Luke's father. Well, from a certain point of view, right? So you can change that and massage it a little bit. Even
Some
the
things.
prequels, even the prequels don't really perfectly flow into the original trilogy, and that's with the same director with the same vision, right? And so what I'm pointing out here is that it's really hard when you're doing multiple movies, a really long saga, to make sure everything is perfect.
With many, many years in between, too.
Exactly. But at the same time, then you get something like Rogue One, which is a throwaway sentence in a crawl in the first movie. And it works. And it works really well. So, like, sometimes it's really difficult to manage it, and other times you hit it right on the bullseye. So I think the real question, if we sum all of this up, is no, it's not for the average fan who's not keeping up with all of this stuff. Okay, we get that. For the fan who wants to consume it, can you do it in a way that is consistent enough, knowing that we're human, knowing that we're going to miss something, there'll probably be a detail that might contradict, but do you love this stuff enough to look past that and say, I just like being in the world?
I mean, I think you can, as long as, things don't rely on you consuming everything.
Yeah. Right? Like you can't just start the Black Panther movie without having watched Civil War. You just can't do it.
Well, because we're talking about Star Wars, I think about the latest series that came out, or pretty close to it, is Ahsoka, which is about Asuka Tano. Now, the problem with that show is that if you don't know who Asuka is from the Clone Wars and Rebels, it's hard for you to understand why things are so weird about her and the Empire and Anakin, and what their relationship was like, because she was his Padawan.
Right.
But if you didn't see that relationship over the course of 9 seasons in the animated show, that, history could be lost. So then why would you watch this show? So I don't know who that is. I don't want to watch, an entire series just so I know what their relationship is. I feel like that's can be a problem.
Yeah. No, it definitely can. And I think where this really boils down to is, do you like it enough to look past that? Or is that going to be a deal breaker?
Depends on how much you love the world. For me, sometimes it's a deal breaker, because it's like, I can't with all of the, I don't have time anymore for all of the stuff I gotta consume
Right.
for this world. But I also don't like being confused.
And I think there's seasons to it, right? Like there were times where I was just like, no, I'm just a Star Wars purist. I'm just gonna hang out with the movies. I'm not even gonna watch any of the shows. Like I don't care Disney Plus. Like you're not giving me anything new because I'm a purist. And then it was like, well, I got some free time. Maybe I should check that out. And then I got really into, Mandalorian, Obi-Wan. All the extra stuff, and that's sort of that's the category that I put it into. It's like, look, there's canon here, and I don't care if you tell me this connects to the movie. I'm looking at it as extra. Period. The end.
I think that's a fine way to look at it. I don't think any story completely relies on it, but I do think that more and more it's starting to. So I think, like, especially these geek universes, like, prepare yourself for having to consume a lot to get the entirety of, I mean, look at the movie we're talking about today. You couldn't watch Endgame cold without at least watching Infinity War, and then even that wouldn't make sense without at least a lot of, if not all of the movies that came before it.
10 years.
So I
I
mean,
think I don't think there's one movie that you can have skipped. Well, that's an interesting question. What movie could you have skipped and not missed a beat in Infinity War and Endgame?
to not miss a beat, I think you have to watch everything. But I know that, like, when Endgame first came out, people were trying to compile lists of, like, these are the non-negotiables. Like, you need, like, these 6 movies definitely
Yeah.
to at least understand it. But I mean, honestly, if you want the whole story, you need all, what, 22? All 22, 23 movies.
I'm going to say 21. There's one movie I think we can get rid of.
And it also helps to have Black Widow, which is retroactively in the middle of that, so, but
Sure.
what's the one you can get rid of?
Take a guess. What don't we need to completely be fine and save 2 hours and 30 minutes of our lives?
Well, I guess you don't need, I mean, just for me, I guess you don't need the first Incredible Hulk movie.
Nah,
Because
you need that.
I mean, he's kind of reintroduced in the Avengers. And when he's introduced in the Incredible Hulk, it's not even really an origin story. He's already the Hulk.
Sure,
So
but that's just character placement.
nothing about that comes into play.
Yes, it does, because you need to understand why he's having a transformation problem.
I guess. But I feel like you can get that from the Avenger movies and Thor Ragnarok. I feel like you can.
Maybe.
I guess you might miss a beat. I don't know. I feel like I know what you're gonna say, but if that's it, then then I disagree, and I feel like you're gonna say Captain Marvel.
No, no, we need
Oh,
her.
then okay, then I don't know.
We need her. We don't need Doctor Strange.
Yeah, well, you need to know that he has the Time Stone, that he's the Sorcerer
He
Supreme.
literally sums up the entire movie that he's in the interaction with him and Tony when he slaps him with the gauntlet cape, or we made a promise to protect the Time Stone. Okay, done. That's it. You don't need the movie.
But you have an origin for every other character that you see in these 2 movies. So I mean,
Maybe, but I feel
again,
like if we're gonna try,
I
like,
feel like that's the same as the Incredible Hulk. Then I feel like if you're saying that, then you don't need this. Then I would say you also don't necessarily need Captain Marvel, because you have the post credit scene that has her show up and say, "Where's Nick Fury?"
we technically don't need any of them.
And then, so I mean, you could.
Maybe Guardians 2.
Yeah, Guardians 2 you might not need, except you have a line in Infinity War when Quill explains that he's only
I
half
had to
human.
kill my
So if
father,
it's
and yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh, why is he only half human? What's the other half? What is he then?
yeah. That's true.
Does he have powers? What does that mean? So, I mean, again, and this goes to the point, like, if you're a completist and you want an explanation for most, if not everything, you need all of it. Other people may look at that line and be like, oh, he's not half human. That's fine. He's a space guy, whatever.
I suppose
It
you're
doesn't
right.
matter. There's other aliens in this, so that's fine.
But audience, what do you think? We're waiting. Tell
Yes,
us.
please. I'm
Right
looking
now.
at my phone right now, expecting a text or a call, being like, I was just, I had my ear pressed to your door just now, and I was listening to
Yeah.
what you were saying.
Drop us a comment on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Instagram about whether you think the multimedia expansion of these intellectual properties benefits or detracts from the original story.
Yes. And which ones do you like and which ones don't you like? We want to know all your opinions, all of them.
Let me tell you what I like. I like this plot synopsis.
I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
I mean, I
can't
set
wait.
the bar pretty high with the Infinity War plot.
But this plot synopsis is the culmination of an entire other episode we did on this movie. So I mean, them's big shoes to fill, my son.
I was just gonna say, thanks for the pressure.
Hit me.
All right,
Do
let's
it.
stretch. Foreboding music. I snapped it. Foreboding music on. Here we go. The Avengers are back, and guess what? They're still reeling from that time Thanos turned half the universe into dust. And now it's time for the survivors of the snap to fix it all by time traveling. Because nothing says solid plan like playing Yahtzee with the space-time continuum. Watch as Thor swaps Ab God for Dad Bod. Hulk finally discovers that anger management is his true superpower. And Hawkeye remembers that he's in the franchise. Meanwhile, Iron Man and Captain America have the world's most passive-aggressive road trip through their own franchise's backstory. Captain Marvel gets a haircut, and Black Widow plays the most intense game of rock, paper, sacrifice in her life. In her life.
Got it. I got it.
In
I
her
got
life.
it. I chuckled.
Will the Avengers undo the snapshot? Will Thanos get to retire and live out his farming dream? It's 3 hours of nostalgia that will punch you in the feels so hard that you'll need therapy and to talk about it on your own podcast 5 years after the movie release. Marvel's Avengers Endgame, because sometimes the best way to save the universe is to break all the rules and cry over a cheeseburger. Dun, dun, dun.
The snapshot. Shut your mouth and get off of this show right now.
Come on.
The snapshot.
I think I've set the bar.
That you set something. But similar to Infinity War, where I normally like to say, who the star of this movie is.
It's everybody.
Again, this is part 2 of Infinity War, essentially. Everybody's in it. Even the people that weren't really in the first one are in this one again. So everybody's in it. It was directed by the Russo brothers, who, also did the Infinity War. So they're all in it. And boy, do we have some thoughts about it.
I have some great stuff about this movie. I've got categories.
Well, wait, hold on. Before we get started, I know. I always like to chime in with a neither good nor bad. Mm-hmm. I have one thing that's a neither good nor bad.
You've got another?
Well, whatever your opinion is of this movie, whether you loved it or you hated it, you were in the middle. Endgame set a bar so high for not only other like superhero franchises, but for itself, that
yes.
it is the reason that things for the most part, the movies and shows and media franchise that followed that fit in this world have gone downhill, because Endgame did what, we thought that the first Avenger movie did, like, wow, 5 movies leading into a big team up that never been done before. Then they did a bunch of them, introduced more characters. It was like, this is going to become a mess. But then they did Endgame, and it's like, how did you tell a story with all these characters being featured, a giant battle, all these huge named actors and performances, callbacks to all these other things?
Totally.
It was incredible what they accomplished, and it kind of ruined superhero movies in a way, because it was
It
like,
very much did.
I liked this thing, or like, what a cool team up, or oh, another time travel movie, but Endgame, kind of did this or did that. So it's like, it's crazy. It is crazy, the bar that they set.
It's a category that I have all by itself, which is just the movie's achievement.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's a fan service movie. I mean, you
Mhm.
could call it fan service the movie. It's a genius idea that as soon as I saw that Ant-Man was involved, I just said, there's a heist element to this because that's who Ant-Man is. He's
Mhm.
the heist character. But then to move it into the time travel realm and honor 10 years of history and storytelling, I mean, it's a payoff to Infinity War. It's a payoff to Phase 3. It's a payoff to the original Six's arc. It is honestly, the best payoff in the entire movie is Peter getting a hug from Tony Stark. But it's all about payoff, and they do it flawlessly.
And that's honestly, that's not good. That's not bad. It's just fact.
It just
Just is. It just is.
Yep, I agree
You
with
don't
you.
have to like it. You don't have to love it. You don't have to hate it. But you can't deny that it is the absolute truth.
That's right. The other thing, to those things of weaving in past stories,
Mhm.
I get chills every time I see it. Just the Shield Hydra aspect of the Winter Soldier is genius to me, and how they integrated that with the moment of Hail Hydra. I
Oh
will
yeah.
never get over. I just will never get over, because I remember seeing it for the first time and I remember laughing to myself going, it was smart then, it's smart now. I love how they did it.
It's great, and it's a callback where you think we're about to have another elevator scene. And I know it's a different group of soldiers, but it's like, oh man, that was one of the best scenes in Winter Soldier. We about to have another, he beats up everybody in the elevator moment, and we didn't, but it was just as good with
Yep.
two simple words.
Hail Hydra. The Trinity fight scene is excellent. I can't tell you how many times once it hopped on Disney Plus, I just fast forward to the last hour of the movie and watched that, starting with "Let's kill him properly" this time. I mean, what a line!
Kill him properly. Oh, and that the thunder, when the thunder like transforms him into looking like this Norse warrior. Like it wasn't the
Yeah,
Big Lebowski going into battle. Like he looked like he looked the best. That's the best version of Thor for me. That look.
I love how. Okay, here we go. We're talking about Thor. I love Thor. This movie is about Thor. I like that when the lightning happens and the transformation comes, he does not slim down. He stays who he
No,
is. I love
stays
that.
who he is, but just gets more badass looking.
Yep. And him in particular throughout this movie, you're going to see this woven throughout all of my feedback. One of my favorite moments is when he's telling everybody about the ether, and everybody's sort of looking around. He's sort of just rambling through this, but he's making fun of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a meta moment, and the entire time Scott is just like, yeah. He's with him the entire time. It's so funny, and it compliments the actor who was given something and did an amazing thing with it. And so to Chris Hemsworth, thank you for your service. Great job with this character and the development of him.
Also, I feel like this was an opportunity for, it was not well received, but he was in the reboot of Ghostbusters, the all-female
Yep.
Ghostbusters in 2016 as the secretary. And he was so funny in that. He was so dim and
Yeah.
had just great comedic timing alongside these people that do comedy for a living. And well, I didn't think it always worked in Thor Ragnarok. This, I think, was his real time to shine as a comedic actor with this character. And he was fantastic because they did it enough without making him a complete joke.
Totally.
You
And
know,
I the other thing I liked is that every character sort of had a new gear to play with. If you're just looking at the Trinity, right? Like Thor's dealing with depression, and he's dealing with the aftermath of everything, but he's also very funny. That's a new gear. Cap is done. I love how he's done with everything. Now he's cursing. Now he's very direct. He's still Cap, but he's done.
The Captain Kid gloves are off.
Yeah, and he picks up Mjolnir. I knew it was coming, and I still get chills every time I see it.
And now they say that retroactively in, I think it's Age of Ultron, when they're all trying to see who can lift it, when they're like having their party.
And he moves it a little.
Thor gets like worried for a second. He's like, no, I can't do it. They say that happened because Cap didn't want to embarrass Thor.
Which is just Cap being Cap.
I like that. I like that little retroactive change there.
I love the opening scene with Hawkeye on the farm. It literally, now you viewer, and if you're my nephews, you guys just get to go from one movie to the other. Some of us had to wait a year, and I'm sure you're like me, where you watched Infinity War before you went to the theater.
Oh, of course. I watched all of them.
But even if you didn't do that, the opening scene perfectly places a profound sense of panic on the audience.
Yes.
And it's masterfully done.
With someone you've also met his family before.
Someone
you care about
and
them.
You didn't see him in the other film.
Exactly. Great way to like kind of reintroduce you to him. And I don't know about you, but that moment, again, when I first saw it, I wasn't a dad when I first saw it. I know you were.
Yeah.
But I wasn't yet. And it filled me with so much anxiety. And I know, we said this about Wonder Woman 84. We said this about one other one. I don't remember which one, but these movies now that where one of the main characters deals with their child, like it just hits me differently when I see them now, where it's like, oh my God, I could never do that, or I would never want that to happen. Like, man, that whole scene of him calling everybody's name and panicking, having no idea what happened, there 1 second, gone the next. Whew, man, every time.
It gets you. Something I noticed this time watching through is that I like how the team, even though they're working together, they're still all on edge, and they're very passive-aggressively arguing with each other. Like, nobody really knows what to do, and they're not at each other's throats like Civil War, but they're definitely, like, there's tension.
There's strain in the relationships there.
Yeah, and it's like, look, we don't have to like each other to work together, but we got to get this done. And you sort of feel that throughout the entire movie. And it's not till the very end, the portal scene.
Oh, I mean,
flawless.
Come on.
It's not until then where you're like, oh, now they're functioning as a team and they've got each other's backs. They've always had it, but they're doing it now with the right intention. I sort of liked that, how it was like, oh, actually, no, nobody knows really what's going on. Nobody's in control, and they're all sort of very on edge.
Well, because, you see this, that they're like working together through necessity, and they're working together through grief and different levels of grief. You have Black Widow, who knew all of these people, lost all of them. Then you have Rocket, who only had his small team. You have Captain Marvel, who really only knew Nick Fury. So there's different levels to their grief and different weight because of the amount of people or amount of relationships that they had within that and how important they were to them. So I think later you see them working together with hope as opposed to working together with and through grief and necessity.
That's a great way to put that. The last good bit of stuff I have is just the music. The music selection in here was really good. Obviously now anytime I hear It's Been a Long, Long Time, I think of Cap and Peggy dancing. It's a perfect close to the song. It's a perfect close to the story arc and the movie. Mm-hmm. But I also love, and I don't know if many people know this song. It's called Dear Mr. Fantasy by Traffic. It's the first song that plays right after the snapshot happens with Hawkeye. But the lyrics are, Dear Mr. Fantasy, play us a tune. something to make us all happy, do anything to take us out of this gloom, sing a song, play guitar. And if you don't know the song, obviously it's just like, all right, somebody's playing, like a 70s, 80s song. But the content of the lyrics is really like where we are as an audience. It's like, I need something to get me out of this funk because I just watched half the universe disappear. I thought it was a really clever and perfect song choice.
I can get with that, and even the the orchestration music was
Mm-hmm.
like the music they use for Portals, the music they use right before Avengers Assemble, the very quiet them. Oh my god, the music for Tony's funeral scene, like just there is something that I think movie lovers understand, and probably the layman as well, but a movie, the score or needle drops in a movie can make or break a scene. And I've seen like parodies of it where it's like, let's take a serious scene, put a silly song. Does it still have the same impact? And honestly, usually not,
Right.
because the music is what helps that emotion swell that they're trying to convey visually. You need the audio there as well. The music in this whole movie is just perfectly dropped, perfectly done well. Even the original ones you hear, like when you see Quill singing Come and Get Your Love again,
Yeah.
it's like that's perfect. That's perfect. It's a perfect callback, and it also kind of fits the moment that Nebula and War Machine are having. It's fun. It's just yeah, the music. Period. The end. The music.
That's all my good. I've got some other, but what other good do you have that I haven't covered?
I have some very specific good. Um, of just kind of these like little moments that stood out to me. Obviously, the portal scene and Avengers Assemble, them all like standing there ready to go.
We lost our minds.
The beginning, I I'm gonna save this because it'll lead into one of my bads, but I love the hunting Thanos scene in the beginning. Before the 5 year later mark. I really like that. The traveling in space, the confronting him, this odd group of the Avengers working together. People that never really worked together on the same team to complete a mission before, except for Black Widow and Cap
True.
and Thor. You throw in Captain Marvel in there, War Machine, Rocket, Hulk in an armor suit, throwing all these different layers in there. It's like, oh, this is kind of a fun team. And, I thought that some of the things that Thanos said were very profound in that moment. So I thought that was done really well. In the final battle scene, you have Cap standing alone. That just shows his character. Tony's been knocked unconscious. Thor's been beaten down. Cap has clearly been beaten down. He's standing before Thanos. Thanos has just revealed his army. He's got half a shield. He doesn't have Stormbreaker or Mjolnir, and he still stands there ready to fight, knowing he's gonna lose, knowing that the teammates he had left are either gone or missing or injured. Um, that is just such a it reminds me of I want to say it was either Ragnarok or the Dark World when Loki impersonates Captain America, and he's like, "Oh, I can feel the righteousness flowing." But that's a perfect moment of like that's that righteousness that he has of this
Yeah.
never give up, never say die, you know, American optimism that is just great. Tony shielding Hawkeye when they are about to do the snap, and you see everybody kind of getting themselves ready. You see Thor kind of stand in front of Rocket, but there's something very moving about Tony bringing up that shield to stand in front of Hawkeye more than himself. Is just a very, it shows this protection and this compassion and love that he really does have for his team, even if you question some of his actions over the course of the last 10 years.
Sure.
Um, I mean, let's talk about I Love You 3000.
Let's not.
I mean, I got it. I got it right there
Yep.
on a little
I
pin.
mean,
My
Absolutely.
my my wife and I say it to each other. I say it to my son. I love you 3000, which also came from Robert Downey Jr.'s own family. Like that's what he and his kids say to each other, and he put it in there. The first one, very moving. At the end, when it's the hologram him saying it, I lost it.
Nope.
Yeah, there was a lot of dust in my house. Despite the snap being reversed, there was a lot of
That kid
dust.
is super cute, and
Oh yeah.
she looked a lot like my oldest at the time, and I was crying a couple times within the film in the theater. That was where I was a blubbering idiot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was a big one. You covered a lot of the thing. It's a great payoff. Um, the portals, the trio versus Thanos. I also liked Cap versus Cap when they go back in time to New
That
York.
was fun.
Cap versus I could do this all day. Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah, I
know.
know.
I like that stuff. I think the best parts of this movie are the opening battle and the ending battle. I think are just cinematic experiences that you're not going to get from other kinds of movies.
We're not going to get again.
Yeah, we're definitely not going to get again. Tony and Nebula, I liked their relationship. I would have loved more Ronan. I thought it was great that they put him in there.
Eh,
I wouldn't have minded a whole Ronan story because I just like the character of Ronan in general. Um, two
yeah,
the
we'll get
last
to him.
but that's fine. The last two things I have, I almost want to save one of them because it leads into my spiritual, but it's one of them is a quote. The other is a quote that I just learned what could have been behind it. I want to know your thoughts.
Sure.
During the portal scene, and then I'm going to save the other one for when we lead in for when we go into spiritual stuff. When the portal scenes happen and you see Wong come out and you see Doctor Strange come out and he says, "Is that everyone? What, you wanted more?" Do you know the significance of that line?
Yes, because apparently our algorithm is the same.
Oh, okay. So what did you see about it?
It told me that he was asking, is that everyone? Because he needed to bring Pepper.
Oh, okay. So our algorithm is similar but not the same.
Okay, so the reel I saw was talking about how Wong was saying, or Strange says, is that everyone? And he says, what, you wanted more? He was asking that to make sure that is everybody here who needs to impact the outcome. And if Pepper's
Right.
not there, he doesn't make that call. If he can't say goodbye, then no, not everyone's there.
Okay. So for me, it was, is everyone here, meaning Captain Marvel, because she turns the tide of the battle. They're
She's
they're losing.
garbage.
They're Shut your mouth.
She's
They're
garbage.
losing. They're losing until she shows up. But either way, I never thought about the significance of the line. Why is he asking, is everyone here? Like, did he want more people? But it's
It's a
because
funny line,
if
but it
this
also
is
works on those levels.
right, if this is the one in 4 billion, then he needs to know, are all the right people here? Are all the people we need to be here? Are they all coming when they're supposed to?
Yep.
So I thought, like, wow, I never realized how significant that line really is because it seems like such a throwaway, like we tried to write a joke and it didn't quite land.
Yep. Marvel don't play.
They really do not. Um, oh, and my last thing is Korg. Love seeing Korg. I'll take
Korg is
Korg any
fun.
way that I can. Just he's here again. He's back in the game. That's great. Great little line. And then you see him, teaming up with what's his name, Drax to fight Obsidian Cull. That was fun. So I love seeing. I'll take more Korg any day.
I love it.
So that's all my specific
I
good.
have one thing that I want to say, which is other,
All right,
and
hit me.
I would like your feedback on it. What do you think about Thor and his impulsivity of chopping off Thanos' head?
Love it.
Yeah, you
I'm a
like
hundred
that?
percent. I'm 100% behind it. I love that whole battle. I think that it concluded that arc. Thor, at his core, is a warrior, so that's not un. I don't think that that's a. It would be different. I think if anyone else in that team did it, like ended his life. But it works for me, and that's his. You see all the stages of grief through Thor.
Yeah, but it's the same thing that Star-Lord does.
It is not. No, 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 no. It's not the
It's
same
the
thing.
same thing.
No, and here's why it's not. Because when Star-Lord does it, they're in the middle of being able to stop him.
They're in the middle
They
of
are
being able to undo it.
No, they're not, because he's already said, I use the stones to destroy the stones. They only serve temptation, so I had to get rid of them. They see his mangled hand. They see the glove has been destroyed, and there's no infinity stones there. Thor, because Thor yeah, he even says later, like, you guys are all earth people, you don't understand, like, the cosmic and all the space stuff. He knows that that's the truth. He had knowledge of the Infinity Stones the way that Thanos and Nebula do. So for him, he knows that right now, for him, there's no going back. Like, they're gone. He's destroyed them. There's nothing left now but to make sure that nothing happens further. And to kind of also, release some anger there as well.
He made a judgment call based on the knowledge and information that he had. And then he said, I went for the head. No, he's not engaging in this cosmic information that he's aware of being a god. He's trying to redeem himself from his past failure.
And how is that the same as Star-Lord? That's not the same at all. Star-Lord was acting only on emotion at a critical time.
Well, so is Thor.
It's not a critical time anymore. The deed is already done, and there's no going back. At that moment, there was no going back. There was no changing the movie. Tony even says to Star-Lord, Quill, keep it together. We've almost got this thing off. We can almost stop him. There was no stopping him anymore. Now it's just revenge.
I'm just saying, the same garbage you gave Star-Lord for his impulsivity and sticking to the plan. Either there was no plan here and Thor just emotionally reacted, or you're absolutely right. There was nothing more to be done and we just needed a way to kill Thanos. Either way, get off of Star-Lord's back.
No, I said I understand your point in the last episode, but I still think Star-Lord was wrong, and that Thor responding like this, not the same.
I think you're a child, but we're gonna go to a break.
I am a child. Just look behind me. Of course, I'm a child.
We're gonna go to a break. We'll be back in a minute.
All right, bye.
Do you have a problem that's too big, too complex, too impossible? Do you think you're in the endgame? Think again. At Mighty Rat Solutions, we specialize in solving the unsolvable. Stuck on an intergalactic crisis? Trying to undo the snap? Maybe just you forgot your Netflix password. No problem is too big or too small for our rodent-like ingenuity. We make the impossible possible. That's the kind of game-changing genius we bring to the table. Special offers we include time travel troubleshooting, story arc salvation. One customer, Noobmaster69, even reported using Mighty Rat Solutions helped build confidence in his online gaming persona. Don't wait for a hero in spandex. Let Mighty Rat Solutions tackle your problem with the precision of a whisker and bravery rodent crossing a time machine. Call us today, because sometimes all it takes is one rat to save the universe.
Very nice.
I can see you weren't getting it.
Am I missing the rat reference?
It's in my bad. You want to just jump right into it?
Yeah, let's jump right into the bed, because the rat. I think I'm missing something with the rat. I thought at first you were referencing Rocket, but you kept focusing on rat, and I was like, "What is the rat?"
The rat is the whole time travel plot. This whole thing, the whole bringing Scott back is contingent on a rat walking across the dashboard.
Oh, you're right.
Like, are you kidding me? Like, even when it happened, I was like, "Oh, it's Mickey."
I completely forgot that that's how the machine turned back on.
It's a subtle meta little Disney thing that's like, "Oh, look, the mouse saved us."
Okay,
and I hate it.
I like that much better now that I have that as a reference point, because honestly, I completely forgot that that's
Mighty Rat Solutions.
how it turned out. Okay, that makes much more sense now.
Now you'll have to go back and understand what I'm talking about. But yeah, I don't.
Okay. Do you want to edit it? Do you want to edit in a better
No,
reaction?
I want to keep this right the way it is. But it's so stupid. It's like, that's how we got Scott out of the quantum realm. Like, the whole thing was like, oh no, he's trapped. How are we going to get him out? We needed a heist, blah, blah, blah. A rat walks across the dashboard and Ken Leong is in the garage. It's like, wait, what are we doing? It's dumb. And that's one of a couple storytelling issues I have with this film. This movie is and then storytelling. Have I talked to you about this?
Well, I actually just recently watched a video of Trey Parker and Matt Stone, who created South Park, explaining and then storytelling versus therefore storytelling.
And that's exactly what this is. If you're not familiar with that, go check that video out. We'll actually link it in our description. But this entire plot is filled with chance things that happen, whereas but and therefore storytelling has a plot that's filled with consequences. Infinity is therefore storytelling, right? But Endgame is and then. Here's an example. Tony puts on his suit of armor right away, but Banner shows up warning him of Thanos' impending plan. Therefore, he plans a fight to defend Earth, but he ends up losing on Titan. That's a progression.
It's an arc. That's a story. You just told a story.
Correct. Whereas Tony Stark almost dies, and then Captain Marvel shows up, and then Scott Lang shows up, and he has a convenient solution to time travel, and then he may need to go on a time fest, and then it's just like, it's constantly and then, and it's boring.
So I didn't put it as that, but that's probably my biggest bad is everything is convenient.
It's all convenient.
Everything is convenient.
Starting
I know
with
they
the
have
rat.
the big problem of everybody having been gone for the last 5 years, and how do we bring them back? I know that's the big problem, but every problem to get from A to B is like, man, here's a problem. Oh, I have a solution. Oh, all right, well, here's another problem. Oh, here's somebody with a solution. Oh, this just happened to work out. Oh, I remember something that happened a million years ago that never would have applied otherwise.
Tony just figures out time travel. Oh, that's cool. Oh, we'll just go back and get the stones. Oh, okay.
That made me roll my eyes so hard. I'm surprised that, like, my eyes looked like The Undertaker, let me tell you. Like, it was... Yeah. I was doing the dishes, and let me turn it inside out. That's like,
That simple? Yeah? No? Not for me.
You know what it reminds me of? I don't know why it reminds me of this, but the flashback going through my mind was in the movie from the late 90s, The Mask of Zorro with Antonio Banderas.
Yeah.
When he's using the sword and he's like, do you know how to use that thing? Of course. The pointy end goes into the other man. That's kind of what it was like. Right. It was like he was using the sword from the wrong end and was like, oh, let me see what would happen if I hold it this way. Wow, it's the greatest weapon ever. It's like, that's exactly what it was. Let's turn it inside out. Oh, I just solved time travel.
Another thing I don't like is that I feel like the film is imbalanced in what it says. Right? Okay. So like they're on a fetch quest the entire time to undo the thing. But they don't really get to revel in the thing they're trying to do, which is they're trying to bring everybody back. And so the movie spends a long time trying to accomplish the thing. Like, the movie is about accomplishing the thing, not having done the thing. And the second they do the thing, Thanos' army shows up, and then it's like, okay, now we got to fight. Well, that's arguably what we wanted to see, but the whole movie is about this process of undoing the events, and it just feels like there's a lot of stuff in it that we don't need as far as side conversations, team ups. Like, it's fan service, the movie, but it feels like it didn't balance out what we were trying to do with what we wanted to see.
But that's because of the and then storytelling.
Yeah.
Because we have Nebula went back in time to help the Avengers, and then,
which I hate.
And then old Nebula was linked in, which doesn't make any sense.
Thank God for Wi-Fi.
Thanos said, "Figure out time travel for me." And then they do it. And then they show up in the future and say, "Oh, I'm going to fight these guys again."
It's like, right. that worked out. Okay.
Like it doesn't make any sense for them to be linked like that. That doesn't make any sense.
No. And so the entire story is convenient. Again, like we said, you are tackling an impossible feat here of wrapping up things. You did an amazing job. 5 years after the movie comes out, addressing it for this podcast, you're sort of like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. So that's the story. I couldn't say anything at the time because we weren't doing the podcast. But now is my shot, and to quote Hamilton, I'm going to take my shot.
No, you're not throwing away your shot.
I'm not throwing away the shot. I'm taking it right now. This is the #1 movie in the world. This movie is.
Yes.
Because screw you, James Cameron, and your re-release nonsense. I don't care that you conveniently re-released Avatar right after this movie stole away the title of biggest film of all time. That is cheating, it is garbage, and I stand behind it that this is the #1 movie in the world. I needed to get that off my chest.
I have no notes. I have no problem with that. And I like Avatar, but to re-release an old movie right when a brand new movie that's doing something that's not been done before is culminating seems like you're taking your ball and leaving the park.
Totally. It's like, well,
It's
I know
like
how to cheat.
it's that kind of attitude.
And it's not even like Avatar 2 was anywhere close to being released to promote that, right?
And it's okay to have competition, because if he was releasing Avatar 2 at the same time and that blew it out of the water, that's fair and square. They were both sequels. They were both part of franchises. One did better than the other. I have no problem with that. You're re-releasing an old movie because your feelings got hurt.
Wah, wah, wah. Let's talk about Captain Marvel and how she's stupid.
I hate you.
How does Captain Marvel know how to go get Tony? How does she know where he is?
No, you're right. That again is a convenience thing. Nah, I mean, I guess you could argue that because she mentions earlier that, like, there are lots of worlds that lost half its people, and they don't all have the Avengers.
Yep.
So maybe she just happened upon it in her travels. But again, if that's what it is, then it's just another convenient thing. Tony and Nebula are dying and floating in space, and then Captain Marvel rescues them. So it's just another convenience thing. If that's how you want to explain it.
Yeah. And 3 weeks of deep space scans deliver nothing, but Captain Marvel shows up and now we know where Thanos is? Give me a break.
Yeah. And they didn't run into any planets.
And I don't like how she doesn't show up until the MacGuffin is needed. And you know what bothers me about Captain Marvel showing up? It is a copy and paste scene from Infinity War. You can literally lay them on top of each other when Thor shows up in Wakanda. The heroes are getting beat down. They're getting overwhelmed. There's too many of them. And then boom, our hero shows up. Our savior is here. It's like, no, we just did this and we did it way better.
But that's, yes, but that's also a standard story. That I'll defend only because in both cases, that's a standard storytelling beat. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You need the cavalry arrives, because you could say the same thing happens in the Lord of the Rings when the army's getting beat down. Look for me when the sun rises, and it's like we're losing. Here's Gandalf with an entire army. It's the same idea. I don't think that's the problem, and I think that it works because we're in the midst of the most exciting part of the movie both times. Or I mean, in all three of those moments, it's such an exciting part, and you're like, oh no, they're gonna lose again, and then the cavalry comes. So I think that's a standard story beat. I don't know that I agree that that's an issue, but I guess if you lay it in the list of all the other problems, I can see why it's a problem. But I think on its own, it's not.
Sure.
I think that if you You line it up with everything else. It's like, okay, yeah, I get it.
And just to close out my bed, I've got two things. I've got some nitpicks, which I'll just blaze through real quick, and then there's a couple things I want to rewrite with this movie.
Okay.
Here's my nitpicks. I think the pop culture references are too self-aware. He says Big Lebowski, and they reference Hot Tub Time Machine. Lebowski's got Jeff Bridges in it, and Hot Tub Time Machine has Sebastian Stan.
I have that here. I have that here as well. Big problem.
Guys, come on.
Big problem. Don't like that. You didn't need both of those references. Why? Yes, that's a problem. Unless you're going to lean into it. If they leaned into it and said, you look a lot like the guy who was in that movie, but I'm not. Oh, okay. Then I would have been like, okay, fine. Just a little poke at a previous work. But if you're just saying it to say it, yeah, no, big problem. So I'm sorry. I was overwhelmed with that thought. What was it? What was your second thing there?
I don't like that the A-Force shows up just because it's logistically impossible and it's so coincidental. The A-Force is all the female Avengers.
Oh, yeah, I have that too.
So when Peter Parker is like, I don't know how you're going to get it through there, and they say, don't worry, she's got help. Yeah, it's cool. What? They all have comms. They all said, hey, everybody right here, we need you, and no boys.
Right. So if like Hawkeye walked up too and he was like, yeah, we'll get her to sit. No, not you.
No.
You. Oh,
it's our turn.
Okay. I'm sorry. And it's not even like these women know each other. None of the ones who show up almost none of them have ever interacted before where they would cohesively work as a team that can like read each other's movements the way that like the core six do. So if the original six landed there and said she's got help, then I would be like, yes, because those are the one they are a unit. They are one unit.
Yeah.
This is not that. It was just a girl power moment, and it was, I get it, and it was cool, but it didn't make any sense.
And also, you just watched this character blow through Thanos' ship. You really think she needs help?
No, you need help. You need help. You're the one laying there who needs help.
Right.
So why are you saying she needs help? When she's talking to you, she is on fire. She is glowing and radiating this energy that looks like flames.
She's good.
She's all right. To that point, why did the other Lady Avengers need to help her? Like, Valkyrie is awesome, but she's just a person on a horse.
Yep.
Pepper is just a person in the Iron Man armor. Like, that's all that. What makes you think you're going to be of any assistance to the glowing person from space who just flew directly through a ship?
Because we needed a moment.
Through a ship several times from space with no suit.
I think Ronan is weird. I like that they threw him in there, but that's exactly what they did. They threw him in there. It's just assumed he's been an assassin this whole time. Like, you lost your family, you lost everyone you know, and the go-to for you is to get tatted up and start killing the Japanese mafia. Like, all right.
All right, well, it's not only the Japanese mafia that he goes after, but here's why I think it makes sense. Because it's a loss of the sense of control.
Yeah.
He has no control, and I think for me it would be, I'm going to get very personal here right now, but my wife and I have had fertility issues before, and it always seemed so frustrating to us that people who didn't want to be parents were able to get pregnant so easily.
Sure.
And for us it was very hard. And we needed a lot of, medical assistance in order to do it. So for Hawkeye, I kind of had that same feeling of like, he eliminated half the universe, which took away the four most important people in my life, took away my wife and my children. And yet these people were allowed to survive the snap. these evil murderers, drug pushers, rapists, whatever evil people they were allowed to survive when the best people that I knew were taken. They don't deserve to get to have the half of life, to be in the half of life that's left.
I see what you're saying, and I changed my mind. You're right.
What a Star-Lord moment.
What a Star-Lord moment. You know, it's not a Star-Lord moment. I know it's how we end the film, and I know Steve finally gets his win, but when they're in the circle and they're talking about, you know, how they're trying to move on, and he's like, you know, 70 years ago, I lost the love of my life. We know. We got it.
This is the Wonder Woman 84 problem.
Yeah.
Now, the difference there is that she lived that whole time. He didn't live that whole time, so it felt more momentary to him. But still, like, you're not moving on. You didn't move on.
Yeah.
Clearly, you went back in time and stayed with her.
Yeah.
I got other problems with that whole thing.
I don't like how the stones are able to destroy the stones. I think that's convenient, too. It's like, oh, we need them to not be here and not able to work. So we killed them. How? They killed themselves.
How? I used the
Okay.
I used the stones to destroy the stones. No, I get it. How did you do that? I said,
Don't ask.
don't be here anymore. And then my hand blew up.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I don't like that Stormbreaker now just becomes an axe. Like, this thing can summon the Bifrost. And so why is Cap with a hammer more effective than Thor with Stormbreaker?
Because the movie needed to happen.
Because the movie needed to happen. I think Bucky should have gotten the shield.
100%. 100%. And that would have been more comics accurate. Sam does get it too in the comics, but Bucky had it first.
But last nitpicky thing, I think it suffers from the Return of the King problem, which is there's too many fake out endings. And we're done. Oh, wait, there's one more scene. And we're done. Oh, wait, let's go see everybody and what they're doing now. And we're done.
And I love that in Deadpool 2 that they poke fun at that.
Yeah.
When he's dying and they're like, oh, that was his last thing. And then one more thing before I die.
One more thing.
Like, I love that stuff. So I don't like
great.
that they didn't poke fun at it. It just was like a lot of epilogues.
So 2 things I think that I'd like to rewrite, and I think would make the story better.
2
this
things
is
or a few
this is
things?
my 2.
2 things, okay.
And they're quick. They're quick, and they both actually involve Tony. The first is that I think if Tony said no to the idea of trying to figure out time travel, he should have stuck with it. And Tony should not have been involved in the movie and the time travel aspect, and he should have come back when Captain Marvel does. So Bruce figures out time travel, and that gives him the foundation to stand on as being Dr. Hulk, right? Like Smart Hulk. He figures it out. And yeah, he sort of does, but Tony's the one who fixes Hulk. Yeah, he's the one who fixes like the baby issue. I think if Tony shows up at the end like Captain Marvel does, that's way more impactful, as opposed to saying, no, I'm not going to do it, except I'm going to do it. And then 5 seconds later, here's your shield. He sits this one out. And that brings me to the second thing that then gets rewritten, is that when Tony shows up and then ultimately does make the sacrifice because he knows this is the 1 in 14,605 chance, it actually puts more of a weight on the sacrifice because he didn't want to do it, and he actually then he's battling this entire struggle like he was in the first Avengers, where Cap says, look, you don't want to be the one to make the sacrifice. You're not the one to lay down on the wire. And he's like, well, I think I would just cut the wire. That whole thing is now going on in his mind because he knows what he has to do, but he doesn't do it. Spends the movie on the sidelines and then comes back to the end fight knowing I am Iron Man.
I could get behind that.
There you go.
I can get behind that.
What
Was
other bad things do you have?
All right. Well, you kind of covered, and we kind of talked about a lot of the things I had. I'm something that goes along with some of the conveniencing is time travel solves everything. It
I
just
hate it.
feels lazy. Um, why did they send the two people without superheroes to the most unknown event, to the most unknown location in the time stream they were going to?
Because they were the ones with the deep relationship, whereas if anybody else went, and I agree with you, I think it's lazy.
I know why in the story they would do it, and I'm not saying it's not an impactful moment, but logically, why wouldn't you send, and like Nat and Clint were also in the Battle of New York. Why didn't Cap and Tony go to Vormir? They also had a bond and a relationship. What an now I'm not saying I would have wanted either of them to die in that moment, but what an impactful moment to have these two men who became brothers, became estranged, to have that moment of sacrifice again in the same exact way that Nat and Clint do. Where like they're almost fighting to be the sacrifice. I don't know. I just think that could have.
If you want a real kick in the nuts, what should have happened is Pepper actually goes with them, and Tony and Pepper go to Vormir. Pepper pulls the "I'm going to sacrifice myself, tell Morgan I love her." Then Tony gets the Soul Stone, and then he realizes at the very end that I actually can't do this because Morgan's alone, but I have to so that Morgan lives. And then we get a moment at the end of classic Disney, I have no parents. Hire me, Marvel.
So, however you want to do it, I think it's stupid that you sent the two non-powered people to go to Vormir. That's
Yep,
silly.
I'm with you.
Also, because of the Black Widow movie that they released after the fact, it kind of took away from the meaningful sacrifice that was made.
Totally. Not even
Um,
a beat given.
the humor is a little forced. Loki, and what I know we've talked about this before. Loki stealing the Tesseract. I know that they did it for the Loki series, but it confuses things. It makes things
Yeah.
it makes things weird.
Well, and all of that is because Thor or because Banner doesn't like taking stairs. Come on.
Yeah, well, again, it's convenience storytelling. Um, I have issue. Oh well, okay. So another thing about Vormir. What happens if only what would have happened if they only sent one person? Like Thanos happened to bring Gamora with him. He didn't know what the price was. They happened to send Clint and Nat together to go get this stone. But what would have
Well,
happened?
they
What would have happened if Hulk was like, four of us don't need to go to New York, so why don't I just go to Vormir as the strongest one? Because it's the most unknown. I'll just go and get that one. Then what would have happened? Like they would have had to go and find somebody and then come back and do the sacrifice bit.
but they all went in teams. So for them, I think that makes sense. For Thanos bringing Gamora, that's the incredibly convenient part. He didn't know what he had to do.
I'm just saying not even for the characters that we saw go, like just in general, what would happen if somebody searching for the Infinity Stones went alone?
Yeah,
Or what if they
you're
went with
screwed.
somebody that wasn't that important to them?
Push.
But then it wouldn't mean anything because you have to
True,
sacrifice that what you love. I don't even like this person.
but it's and then storytelling, so it works.
I don't think we spent enough time with Scott, who is the only character who survived the snap, who didn't have the last 5 years to kind of understand what happened. Like he's hearing this information that I've been gone for 5 years. 5 years ago, this world ending event happened to people that I know, to my new family, people that I love. We didn't really spend any time on him, and then he goes right into humor mode. we didn't spend any time. I think it was a missed opportunity to spend at least a little bit of time with him as the audience surrogate of like, you said 5 years later. So even we as an audience, we didn't watch 5 years of the life of these people and going through the stages of grief and getting from A to B and how they are as people now. That would have been great for Scott to be that person for us. And he wasn't. He just was, he came to grips with it pretty quick.
But you bring up another point that is like, well, is the quantum realm outside of the known universe? How is he like unaware of this? Is the quantum realm immune from the snap? Apparently, because it's like he's underwater and has no clue what's going on. I get he wasn't here, but there was no effect of the snap in the quantum realm?
Well, at that point, we hadn't seen Quantum Mania, so he hadn't met with, I think, discernible life the way he does in Quantum Mania.
Well,
So
and I
maybe,
get 5 minutes. Yeah.
and right, and to him it was 5 minutes. So would you have noticed that somebody was missing if in only 5 minutes?
Maybe not.
Probably not. Um, I got issues with a couple more things. The humor was forced for a lot of it anyway.
Yep.
I really liked the Hawkeye show that they did, Hawkeye and Kate Bishop. I liked it, but again, they missed an opportunity to have Lila become the next Hawkeye, especially because he calls her Hawkeye, and they're having her practice with a bow and arrow and be really good at it. So,
Das ist stupid.
oopsie, whoopsie, whoopsie daisy there. Um, all right, two more. Oh, I don't like Smart Hulk, by the way. I don't like Smart Hulk. I think
I don't like Hulk as a character,
in
so it
general,
doesn't
but
really
I think
matter
that
what version he is.
again, this version of Hulk is silly. He's like
Yeah.
silly with the like, taking. Why does anybody want pictures with him? He failed to save the world. Why does
And
anybody
don't
want
say
a photo
dab.
with him?
Yeah.
Deb, listen to your mom. Eat your vegetables. Say your prayers and take your vitamins. What are you, Hulk Hogan? Like, come on. Ridiculous. They don't do enough with the logistics of the snap. Now they address it later in some of the TV series of people coming back and things being different because it had been 5 years. So like again, what
Sure.
if somebody was snapped away and they were in the middle of surgery and now they show up again on top of someone else getting surgery in that same spot with their, chest open. You know what I mean?
I think that's why they had to address it in things like WandaVision, that there's a difference between the snap and the blip. Right? So they've even changed the names of it. The snap is when everyone disappears. The blip is when everyone comes back.
Okay.
And yeah, they've done that in a couple of the TV series where people are coming back, and what does that actually mean? WandaVision does a really good job of sort of covering some of that initially.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. It's like pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. But when you start asking those questions, it's like there's going to be a lot of chaos here.
And I think they addressed it really well in Hawkeye with new Black Widow. I can't remember her name off the top. Florence Pugh.
Blacker Widow,
Yeah. Like they did a really cool scene with it, but
Yelena.
yes, Yelena. They didn't make it. It didn't make any sense if you think too hard about it.
Yep.
And then I have issues with Cap returning the stones.
Don't we all?
Here's my biggest one. Did he have to return the Soul Stone? And if he did, was
Yeah.
that an uncomfortable conversation between him and Red Skull?
Like, hey, bro, long time no see.
Just saying. Also, how did he get the Mind Stone back into the scepter? Um, there's a lot of How did he put it back in on Morag? Like, it just, there's a lot of nah.
Yeah, I mean, does Nat come back because he returns the stone, therefore undoing that whole emotional scene of the 5 OG Avengers on the dock? Like, can't be undone, can't be undone. Well, we put the stone back.
Well, no, Hulk explains that, like, that changing the past doesn't change the future. The stupid the Hulk. If I think about it too long, it becomes ridiculous, and I can't
Right.
I can't
I mean,
overthink it.
all of them. You could overthink every single Infinity Stone, right? So, like, if Nat doesn't come back when you put back the stone, then that doesn't work. Doctor Strange creates a time loop for Dormammu, but that doesn't change anything in Infinity War. The Space Stone creates portals for Captain Marvel, but now she's powered by it. Vision is a host to the Mind Stone, but it doesn't influence him the way that it influences Loki and Wanda.
Yeah.
The Reality Stone has no rules. It's like the second you ask one question, all of it falls apart.
Well, here's another question, and it's my last thing that's bad. Um, when you see Thanos first get all of the stones, you see this surge of power that goes through his whole body, right? When Hulk puts on the glove, surge of power through his whole body. Tony puts them on, surge of power. Thanos puts it on the second time during that battle, surge of power. He doesn't feel that the stones are missing.
No.
Why?
OMG science, bruh.
It's like, you just watched him go like, oh, so much power in the stones of the universe. They went missing. I'm inevitable. Oh no. Come on.
You did that really well.
Thank you.
You want to talk spiritual stuff?
Yeah, you want to hit us first, or you want me to dive in?
Yeah, and I think we're both talking about Thor. Correct me where I'm wrong.
That is correct.
We're both talking about Thor. He's immaculately written in this film. He's dealing with the loss of his father. He's dealing with the loss of his home that he could not prevent. His brother, half of his people. Then Thanos shows up, and even though he stabs him, he fails at preventing the snap. He is now reduced to screaming at nerds online.
He's also lost his love and his best friend.
Yeah, he's waiting for the next keg. He's hiding from who he really is. And underneath all of that is grief. And the pain of loss, the pain of anger, there is overwhelming sadness, and his consistent fear, even at the name of Thanos, highlights how wounded he is. And yeah, he's overweight. I think a lot of people had an issue with that. But that is the visible difference of a person that we know, and how grief and sadness and loss have turned this person and transformed them into something else. And the verse that came to mind was in Psalm 147:3, and it says, He, that's God, He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Mm. And I think we can easily throw that verse out there and just be like, well, God can fix us emotionally. And I believe He does. But what jumps out at me is the tenses of the verbs. It says He heals and He binds. It's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process. It is a process of healing. It is a process of binding. It is actively working towards healing.
It's not a future thing either. It's not a He will. It's He does.
It's He does. And I think that our wounds at times take time to heal. A lot of people look at Thor and they're angry that they did this to the character. They treated him so poorly. Yeah, but wounds change people. And we got a visceral look at what that looks like. And for us, wounds change us. And they change our perception. They change our cynicism. They change our optimism. They change our hope. They change everything about us. Sometimes that's a physical transformation. Other times it's a very emotional and spiritual transformation. But I think with time, God can help us process and heal from those wounds. But that's the point. It takes time. He does help us. He does bind us from these emotional woundings and damage that we experience in our lives. But that's going to take a process, and it's not a light switch. It takes time.
Love it.
What'd you get?
So mine was also Thor, and for me, the one of the most impactful parts of the movie is when Thor goes to retrieve the ether from Asgard in the past, and he converses with his mother, who encourages him. He reaches out his arm. Mjolnir comes back to him, and with shock, he says, "I'm still worthy." That,
Mm.
hot take, that's the most moving part of this movie, is the idea of I'm still worthy. And how often do we as people worry about our own worth? And we as, people who believe in God, people who follow Christ, we often find ourselves having done things that we feel make us unworthy of love, unworthy of God's love, especially, if we believe that he is the ultimate creator, the ultimate sacrifice, the ultimate showing of love unconditionally. I'm not worthy of that. Look at this person that I am. Look at these things that I've done. I'm not worthy of that. Even if maybe I was, but I'm certainly not now.
Mm.
But we have to remember throughout scripture, we are created in God's image. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. There's nothing we can do that keeps us from finding worth as God's beloved. In Romans chapter 8, I think it's 38 and 39.
Yeah, no, you're nailing it. For I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything in all of creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord.
These are all things that can come up against us, that can make us think, I'm not worthy of being used. I'm not worthy of God's love. I'm not worthy of being in this position that God has put me in. But God looks at us and says, you're still worthy. And it gives us an opportunity to be amazed at the fact that we can say, I'm still worthy. And to me, that was part of Thor's arc. And it just speaks so deeply to me about feeling worthy.
It's also interesting as you bring it up that like the response that he has, the tear in his eye, the surprise that the hammer comes back, all of it sort of says like that was the issue. It wasn't like all these other things that he sort of made it to be. Like the issue was self-worth.
Yeah.
And how often does that, like I'm not going to be catching a hammer anytime soon, but if I was able to snap into focus that my real insecurity is about my worth, how quickly would I be able to move on?
Yeah. Right. So it's
great,
about,
man.
it's not even about what happened. It's about, I allowed it to happen, and I should have been better. I should have been stronger. I should have been different, but you're not. Failure is part of who you are, and it helps you grow, and you're still worthy.
It's great, man. I want to rate this.
I also do, but I'm worried you're going to judge me about my rating.
I'm worried you're going to judge me. So let's take that out. I am still worthy, despite my rating.
But no, go ahead. Why don't you hit me with your rating?
You're going to be surprised. I gave it a Pattinson. It's okay.
Wow.
It's good. There's a lot of problems with it. It's fun, but it lacks cohesion that I think is required to properly end this level of story. It still made me cry, and I will never forget the experience in the theater. It wobbles on the landing a bit for me, and because of the balancing act that it had to do, it is excellent, but it still struggles. And to me, I can't say it's great. And it's bordering on good and okay, and because of that bordering, and because I've got way more issues than I thought I would, I give it a Pattinson. It's okay.
Okay. Well, I went a little higher than you. I went.
Did you
with,
bail on this one?
I went with a. I went with a bail, and here's
Nice.
why. Now clearly from our conversation, we had a lot of issues with the movie. We had a lot of the same issues, but because of what it was able to accomplish, I would have under normal circumstances if this was any other movie, I would have put this as a Pattinson or an Affleck. But because it was the culmination of 22 films, 10 years, did something no other movie had done before. The payoff, the references, that final battle scene, Avengers Assemble, that kind of is what pushed me over the edge. The emotional impact gave it just enough of a nudge despite the criticism that I have, which I know, you can't, necessarily, you want to take emotion out of it sometimes so you can fairly judge it. I think I fairly judged it, but I would be remiss if I said it still didn't have an impact on me.
You want to take it out. However, this is a defining moment, not only in culture, not only in comics, but also in film.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can't just separate what it did. I tried to with my rating. I have to give the devil his due. It's an amazing feat what they've been able to do.
Yeah.
Watching it 5 years later, cold, coming out of my own snap and not taking emotion into consideration, it's all right.
Again, any other movie, it would have been lower, but I think that because of what it did, it was so good. Not great. The problems didn't make it flawless or great, but it's good. I'd watch it again. I'd enjoy it just the same, despite its problems. So that's where it landed for me.
Well, let's get out of here. What do you nerds think? Do you guys like this film? What would you rate it? Follow us on YouTube at Sanctum Sanctorum Pod. You can follow us on Instagram at The Sanctum Podcast. And you can find us on Facebook at Sanctum Sanctorum Pod. We would love to hear from you. Drop us a comment or a like and share this episode.
Or do all of them. You don't have to just pick one. This is one of the rare cases you can have it all.
Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on Spotify as well when you want to be in the car, because you shouldn't watch YouTube in the car.
Yes, no, that's very true. But we also understand that you still want the dulcet tones of our voices. So,
and boy, are they dulce.
We give you as many opportunities and options as we possibly can. So, but if you're ready to call it, I'm ready to call it. So,
call it,
kids. You got to remember, don't base time travel adventures on movies. Or do. I'm not a cop. What's the worst that could happen?
Did you just reference Time Cop?
No. No, actually, that was a Simpsons reference that I don't know that anyone will get, but it's when Lisa is going to go down an alley and there's a sign that says, "Do not enter," or "Enter." I'm a sign, not a cop.